This is Football Primetime. I'm your host, Bill Dean. Of course, here with my two co-hosts, Brett and AJ. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Brought to you by Sam Wu. I'm behind the glass today. Please just a 5-star review, thumbs up, whatever you can do to support the podcast. We really appreciate it on whatever app or device you are listening to. Gentlemen, I didn't want to bring up the Jets at all today. I didn't want to say anything about them because I was depressed. I am depressed. Being a Jet fan is the worst. It is shitty. And I wasn't going to say anything. I was going to pretend like they didn't exist. And then all of a sudden, I see on my Twitter feed that one Ryan Tannehill, former quarterback of your Miami Dolphins, current quarterback of the Tennessee Titans, comes out and essentially says he wants to be let go. He's the backup, I think. Is he currently the backup? He's either the backup or he's actually the third string of Malik Willis behind him.
Third string, I think.
Is he third string now? That could also be injury related, though.
Yeah.
It could be. But so I see that, and to me, that's the equivalent of Patrick Mahomes coming out and saying he wants to be released and wants to be with the Jets. Because to me, anybody is better than that rat shit quarterback we have playing right now. And listen, he played decent, and most of it, killer penalties. CJ Uzomah deserves to get just cut. Of course, they didn't do it. They cut Michael Carter instead, who had a terrible chop block, by the way. But when I watch football, I see the stench lines coming off of Zach Wilson. Like it's like the haha kitty movies where you see like the stink smell over top of Pepe Le Pew. I see that all the time over Zach Wilson. And the fact that he continually throws dinks and dunks and is averaging 6 air yards per target. The only time that long runs break out is because he throws it 6 yards and then either Brees or Garrett Wilson run it 50 more yards to give him a little bit of a pop. And Al Lazard is the biggest waste of number 2 talent, paid like number 1 talent wide receiver I've ever seen in my life. We've already said that CJ Uzomah's dog poo-poo. There's 2 guys on offense that I have trust in, and I would immediately have 10 times more trust in someone like Ryan Tannehill. I don't care that he's a game manager. I don't care that he was the fastest guy and should have been water. I don't care about any of that. I care that he is a better quarterback in the room. If this is true and he really wants out, I hope A, that the Titans do it, but B, I hope the Jets don't make the mistake of letting him go to the Browns, who actually I kind of like Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I kind of like him. He's got legs, and he can. I mean, Zach Wilson has legs too, and he used them a little bit on Sunday, but Robinson could just flat out fly like Lamar, and he did. I know he had a bad first game. They're going to take off the training wheels, and he said he's not going to be a deer in the headlights anymore. I like DTR better than I like Zach Wilson, and I'm hoping that the Browns have blinders on and like DTR more than Ryan Tannehill if he does become available. But that's what, in essence, I saw that, and I was like, God damn it, Jets, you did it to me again. And they didn't even do anything. It's just my dumb brain being like, oh, Jets, let's maybe get a toy that will work a little bit better than the previous one.
Brett, you want to take this first?
Yeah. So one,
I feel like you got to pull me off a ledge here or something.
we got to pull back from the Mahomes comparison there for a second.
No.
We can't let that one
wait. I didn't mean he is Mahomes. I just meant, to me, it's the equivalent of someone of Mahomes saying, "Oh, I want to play on a somewhat different team," especially when my toy is that little tiny dog that we used to have that used to walk around with, trailing it by a string because it had wheels on it. And you thought, ooh, it's a cool toy. When all of a sudden the Robo Dog comes in and you're like, oh, wow, look at that thing. That's so much better.
Well, that is understandable. Like, I get the desire to have Tannehill. The only thing that I would be concerned about is you got to look at the numbers for Tannehill this season and last season. Yeah. They're not great. I mean, so in terms of what you're going to get in terms of an on-field game manager, yes, it's a step up from Zach Wilson if this were to go down the way you're seeing it. But the other thing is, you do have some questions. Like, how much of the offense is it truly going to unlock? Tannehill has not been a guy who's been throwing deep balls for a long time. So right now, I wouldn't put the arm talent much outside of Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson right now has a much better arm in terms of deep balls and things like that. The only thing that Tannehill provides that I think is better than Wilson is protecting the football, being able to set up protection and packages for the team in general, audibles at the line, being a good mental QB. But I don't know if the physical talent is there much anymore with Tannehill that would make him a significant improvement over Wilson.
Okay. I'd also say, too, that the Jets' offensive line has been hot garbage, too. So do you really want Ryan Tannehill to try to scramble and get out of the pocket, or would you rather have Zach Wilson, who has some legs, who can make some kind of plays, right, with his legs a little bit? I think that's your better bet. And our ship sank. You know, it moved on once they didn't get Dobbs. Once Dobbs was traded, that was it. I think that was the perfect guy to go after, right? And you see what he's doing in Minnesota. You know, he's playing well, coming off of, 2 weeks now. That was the guy that the Jets should have gotten. Now that's passed, they're riding with Wilson, and that's what it's going to be until, by some miracle, Rodgers comes back in early December, which is
he's not coming back. He's not coming back. Not coming back.
You don't think, well, that would be the other wrinkle.
This team will have tanked. They're going to lose this week to Buffalo because Buffalo owes them a butt whooping, and Buffalo looks like terrible doggy doo as well, and they need to immediately right the ship or they're totally done. So I can imagine that this is going to be a beatdown. And then Miami needing a win against the terrible Jets when they can throw all over the field, they're going to win that too. It's just quick. You talked about stats, 2021, 2022, because that's really all we compare these two teams to, or these two quarterbacks to. Completion percentage for one Zachary Wilson is 55%. Completion percentage for one Ryan Tannehill is 66%. So 11 percentage points more. Somewhat significant. Passing yardage. And remember, last year, Tannehill only played in 12 games. They did bring in Malik Willis because he got hurt. Ryan Tannehill in 2 seasons, 21-22, with 6,000 yards passing. Do you want to guess how many Zach Wilson has in 2 seasons? 3,000 yards passing. Yes, 3,000 yards passing. Let's keep going because this is a fun stat. Touchdowns and interceptions. One Zachary Wilson, 15 touchdowns to 18 interceptions. One Ryan Tannehill, 34 touchdowns to 20 interceptions. Long passing. Zach Wilson's long was 54 yards. Tannehill's was 69. I don't know what those comparisons are if it was someone that just ran it, but still. QBR, which seems to be a pretty decent stat for determining how crappy a quarterback is. Zach Wilson is a 34, and Ryan Tannehill is a 56. So I'm going to say that the stats, even though he's 35 years old versus a 23, 4-year-old, is he 24? 23? Whatever it is, it sucks. 24. I'm going to go with one former Texas A&M wide receiver turned quarterback.
I just don't think it's worth it for the Jets to grab him now. You gotta teach him the offense.
Well, how about all right, fine. How about just as a backup? If he comes in and he replaces Trevor Siemian, but then it at least gives us the ability where Zach Wilson is once again in one first half have like 8 yards passing and he sacked the ball, fumbled like 3 times. It at least brings us the ability to bring in a quarterback that might be competent.
Sure. I mean, the fact that he hasn't been sat is a little baffling to me.
Oh no, it's terrible.
But I do think it's not just him. You know, this whole offense is just in shambles, and
I agree.
That defense.
Yeah, he was not nearly as bad last week. I mean, comparative to what he normally is, which is one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever watched, to less than game manager, to be nice, I guess. He was meh. All right, enough of that about the Jets. I saw that and immediately I was like, oh, well, that figures. That something would come up that would maybe get me a little bit of excited, and then right back in the toilet for
I'll give you one
game.
thing, Billy, because I just took a deep dive and looking at stat comparison. If we just look at their last 18 games, so that's this season and last season, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's really not a whole lot of difference. Like a 7% completion different. Yardage is only 100 yards different. Tannehill has 4 more touchdowns, which equates to a 3.1 touchdown percentage on passes versus Zach Wilson right now, who's at a 2%. Yes, that's an improvement, but both are still laughably low. And I think that's what me and AJ are saying. It's like, yeah, it might be a little bit better, but like, is a little bit better that much worth it at this point in time?
I guess the completion percentage is the big one for me. It's 10 points in completion percentage, and then QBR is just light years better. I know he's at 33.1 now, but that's, bad start, right? I don't know. Anyways, yeah, this is football primetime, and I'm talking about my crappy team. It's just... That's this kind of excited stuff that you see as a Jet fan. It's, oh, hey, Ryan Tannehill might be available. Look, we can upgrade our team.
It's not just the Jets, though. It's also the New York Giants as well that are just in complete disarray as well.
Yeah. Well, all right, so let's get to the Giants because that was, what is the stat? 89 points to like 17 total Cowboys versus New York Giants this 2 games. But the Giants have hope because they're going to go down and be top 3 worst team in the NFL. Now, if they get the top 2 picks, they get a shiny new quarterback. The Jets will not have that no matter what. If we tank now, we're still going to have 4 wins, and we have a defense that's lights out and can do awesome. And that's the whole thing. The defense is just they played great last game, and of course the offense just continually screws them up. I didn't want to get into this stupid game, but listen, the Giants have hope because of that one factor that they're going to be so bad that they're going to get the quarterback of their future. And Drake May looks awesome. Caleb Williams, I know there's some, he cries or whatever. I don't really give a crap. It shows me the kid cares. I see Zach Wilson. I can't keep comparing to the Jets now. But I see 2 quarterbacks that are respectable and look like they could be franchise changers. And if, God forbid, you got the 3rd pick, that's an elite wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. We're talking about maybe the best since Megatron, right? Calvin Johnson. The kid is lights out.
Play a
top 3 pick.
If you don't get that 1 or 2 pick, right, and you don't trade up, from one of those quarterbacks, you got to figure, right, that Chicago might go for a quarterback. Arizona might go for a quarterback.
Well, and if not, they're going to trade for it, right? So either the Giants would have to trade up, or some team would trade up to that, right?
But the Giants want a quarterback. Not really... Their best hope is the Cardinals getting a top pick because, in my mind, they're the most likely team who's going to have a top pick, who's most likely to trade it away. But
so listen, you don't want to go into next year with a rundown quarterback, and right now they're going to have a guy. Well, they're going to have Daniel Jones. He's $64 million. Yes.
Yeah, he's a $48 million cap hit on the next season. So you can't cut him. He's a $69 million dead cap hit. So there's literally almost nothing that they can't cut him. You still be paying that, and there's no one in their right mind is going to trade for him. So I get what you're saying, but right now, at least in my eyes, this is the Giants' future for at least the next 2 years.
Yeah, and I'm sorry,
not if they get a 1st or 2nd pick, because if they do get Caleb Williams, 1st or 2nd, Caleb Williams, Drake May, they're going to take him. and they're going to start him, and they're just going to have a very expensive backup.
But the other thing is they're allowing the most sacks in the league. So, I mean, I'm always the person who, with the state that the Giants are in, I would much rather take a first-round offensive lineman than a quarterback. I mean, it's what happened like the first season with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. I mean, it took them a year to even build a reasonable team around him. I hate watching these quarterbacks get drafted to these teams without offensive lines and then just get ridiculed by everyone for how much they stink when there's absolutely nothing they can do. And that is what's going to happen if the Giants get someone like Caleb Williams.
So I agree. I think what you do, though, right, is you still draft him, but that following year, right, you have Williams just sit on the bench. Just watch Daniel Jones, take the year off, learn a system, right, under Dayball, right? And then
do the Eli Manning route. Eli Manning route. Eli Manning's line, yeah. Listen, there are some free agent linemen available. I know Tyron Smith from the Dallas Cowboys is always hurt, but he's at least available. You have Andrews Pete, Dwayne Brown. There's going to be some guys that you could plug and play. Jonah Williams, who's a very good right tackle that's playing, very good left tackle that's playing right tackle in Cincinnati. He's a bit of UFA. So there are some guys that you can grab off the free agency. I was going to say, and the problem is that they have $64 million to commit to Daniel Jones for next season, but there's a guy like Kirk Cousins available in this upcoming free agency. There's Jacoby Brissett. You have Jameis, if you really want to go crazy. Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew. So you can bring in another guy to compete with Daniel Jones to throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. if you really had to go the third route. But yeah, you grab the quarterback and you run and you protect around him and you let Daniel Jones kind of start her off and you see what comes. But I still see massive hope for the New York Giants.
Real quick, right? If the season were to end right now, I'm just looking at standings. Carolina, right, finishes as the worst team. That pick goes to Chicago. Yep. Mm-hmm. The next team is the Patriots.
Patriots are the second overall pick right now?
As of right now, that's yeah. Then you have Arizona, right, and then the Giants. So
right now, they're 4?
Yeah. According to ESPN standings, they are at 4. So what do you do there? Do you just?
That's what I was saying.
Bears beat Carolina. No. So for some, I'm looking at NBC and they did a mock draft just 2 days ago. So this would have been after the standings, and they're saying that the Giants do have the number 2 overall pick. So they have Chicago Bears 1, Giants 2.
I have the Cardinals at 2. Giants at 3.
Patriots 3, Cardinals 4. Yeah, I don't know how this draft's gonna work out, but the point is, I guess, and there is a good lineman available. The kid from Penn State, Fashanu, is apparently ridiculous. And there's also quarterbacks available in deeper in the draft. You have Shadur Sanders if you really think that he's worth it if he doesn't go back. You got J.J. McCarthy from Michigan. These guys are second round picks. You also have the kid from who's going to win the Heisman? It's not Penix, but Jaden Daniels from LSU. Yeah, Jaden Daniels is interesting. He's an interesting prospect because he's got size. He can run like the wind. I mean, this kid, I put money on him to win the Heisman. I think he's going to be nasty. But yeah,
going off that a little bit, I mean, if you're looking at the Giants and you say that they are going to take a quarterback this year, if they're smart, you take the most mobile quarterback you got in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
So Sanders is honestly a good option there. I mean, not saying that you're doing it because it's the best long-term option, but in order to win games now with that offensive line, you got to have someone that's mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We've gotten, we'll do more draft stuff, obviously, when the season's over. It'll be a little better. Joe Burrow, best QB in the NFL from Marshall. You should hear Bill when the Jets are actually playing, complains the whole way. LOL. Yep, that is very true. All right. Last week, a little bit of the games, and then we'll get into this week's slate. Last week, interesting, week 10, we had some games that I was pretty impressed to see the teams come out. You saw the Cowboys smother the Giants, and they really do. They beat on the sisters of the poor. I mean, Prescott has 5 touchdowns, and he looks like he's running around like pumping his fist like it was a giant accomplishment, when really he's playing against essentially the college football players. Bears on Thursday beating the Panthers. That was and the primetime games. Was that the weakest? Was that the worst primetime slate we've ever watched in a week? And we knew going in it was going to be bad, but it was even worse, I think.
The funny thing is, going into the week, the Bills were the only team in a primetime game with a winning record. Now that all the primetime games have happened, none of them have a winning record anymore. The best record out of anyone who was in a primetime game last week is 5-5. So that just kind of shows you how bad those games were going into it.
Yeah, it was rough.
But I mean, missed calls everywhere. That the Patriots-Colts game was a snooze fest. So, at least you guys. Well, actually, I almost slept through most of it. You guys got to see probably the whole thing because that started at like 9:00 for you guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then that Jets-Raiders game. I know you guys. We won't get into it too much, but it is nice to see the Raiders. New head coach. First, 3 plays of the game, passes to Devontae Adams, and then feeding Josh Jacobs for 20 touches a game. They're getting back to what they did last year, and that's why when we started the season, I said, look out for the Raiders to be a sneaky good team. They're getting back into that realm. They're still not a good team, but 5-5, they're not out of it. And man, that Bills game, I feel bad for their offensive coordinator getting fired because I don't think he deserved to be fired. But so many turnovers. That was the sloppiest game of football.
And that's Josh Allen.
Who do you give the ball to? It is Josh Allen. There was a couple things. There was a ball, the Gabe Davis pick was not his fault. Right in between his hands. James Cook fumbling on the first play of the game. There were some flukes in there, but it's just weird to see a team that most people were picking to be, borderline Super Bowl contender now at risk of not even making the playoffs. And
floundering.
We talked about it last week. There is a chance for all 4 AFC North teams to make the playoffs, and the Bills losing was step 1 in that happening. So we're getting closer.
Yeah. Go ahead, AJ. Sorry.
I'll say it'll be interesting to see what happens with this game, right? It's 7-0 already. Ravens right now, so
I got a couple bets on this game. I need Mark Andrews to go over on yardage, which was 50. I think it was 50 yards. Receptions, which is 4.5, and then anytime touchdown. And then I also need the.
You won't like to hear that I'm getting notified that he got hurt. And
Andrews got hurt already?
First drive.
Oh my God! What happened?
I'm too scared to watch the video because when videos like that make it to Twitter.
Oh, is it really that bad?
Well,
he's in the locker room with team doctors. That's all I see.
Oh my God! I'm looking it up now. One down and then limped. He just twisted the ankle.
Ravens-Bengals. That Bengals game last weekend against the Texans is CJ Stroud potentially worth an MVP conversation?
It's tough. My opinion on that is if they make the playoffs, yes. We'll start there. If they make the playoffs, absolutely in the conversation. You can't doubt it. And it's more of just you have to look at where that team was last year compared to where they were this year. A lot of the same pieces, to be honest. But the big difference is obviously CJ Stroud. So if they make the playoffs, absolutely he's in the MVP conversation. But right now, the people who are in the MVP conversation, I don't necessarily 100% agree with. Like, Mahomes is still up there. I'm sorry, he's not having an MVP caliber year.
No.
Burrow's starting to creep into it with how he's played the past couple of weeks, which is fine. But obviously, these awards have a lot of recency bias. It's hard for me to forget how big of a dud he was for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Lamar is obviously creeping into the category. And he, to me, should be the front runner for MVP. The way the Ravens are looking, Lamar looks great. He's not lighting the world on fire, but he's getting back to what he used to. He's right around like 200 yards passing a game, rushing for 50 to 60 yards, and they're winning games in convincing fashion. And their defense looks good. But I mean, I have him up there. But yeah, they have to make the playoffs.
Mark Andrews did walk off the field on his own, but that did not look good. Oof. Yikes. Well, that's fantastic. Goodbye. Yeah, I just can't make this stuff up sometimes. I swear to God. One thing. Just all right. Back to the schedule, and we had scores from week 10, like I said. And why is all of a sudden? I guess I'm on NHL because God forbid things. I'm doing great over here. This is absolute great podcasting. All right, we talked about so Colts Patriots in that Monday, or that's the Sunday morning game, was 10-6. I mean, Bill Belichick. I actually almost feel sorry for him.
No,
I don't. It's that bad. But Texans Bengals, we talked about. CJ Stroud possible. Vikings beat down on the Saints and Josh Dobbs, of course, because nice shiny things work out well for certain teams. Tyson Chandler came out of nowhere and played pretty well. And TJ Hawkinson is man-possessed at tight end. Brett, your Steelers beating the Packers. They are 7. You're 7-3 or 6-3? I'm sorry.
6-3, and it's starting to look more like classic Steeler football, getting away from the passing game. I mean, obviously they made the shift when we had Big Ben, but now that Pickett's not Big Ben, we're shifting away, going back to the running game, and both Warren and Najee look legit. But the thing I want to talk about from this Steelers and also the Vikings game, who's your guys' front runner for Coach of the Year? O'Connell or Tomlin?
Oh, I have O'Connell.
Because
you
have O'Connell?
Yeah, because
in my mind, it's between those two.
Listen, the Steelers, you expected a ridiculously good defense. Like, they're going to be their bread and butter, and you were hoping that Kenny Pickett would take the next step, which he hasn't, but you still have pieces. You have Pickens, you have Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris just lost his job to, Jalen Warren, but you have pieces around them. You have a good offensive line. The pieces were always there to be a possible playoff contender. Minnesota, I think everyone saw last year with the quick, they were so close in games and it was an aberration. This year, it's exactly the opposite. Plus, now they're winning without their two best players. Justin Jefferson's been gone for 6 weeks, and their quarterback is gone, and you have Josh Dobbs comes in, a guy that was on a second stringer for for Cleveland in the beginning of the season. It's Kevin O'Connell. I don't even think it's close. I put money on him to win this too. I don't see how you can say anything else at the moment.
I think the only other one that I could maybe see in the conversation is Mike McDaniels. Just the way that offense has.
The only other person I would put in that conversation for Coach of the Year would be Dan Campbell.
Campbell, yes. I like that one.
I have Campbell, O'Connell, and Tomlin, and they're a step ahead of almost everyone else.
Before I can't believe I was going to say before Deshaun Watson went down, Stefanski might have been up there too. I mean, that's a team.
Chubb.
Actually, there's one guy we forgot about, and deservedly so, because his team could be in the playoffs. It's one D'Amico Ryans, Houston Texans.
Yeah,
that's actually a better. I think him and O'Connell are closer together for Coach of the Year than you would put Tomlin. And listen, Tomlin's done great. I can't complain about Mike Tomlin. Every single year, the guy is over 500. It's ridiculous. Steelers football is just crazy. It's like it's just born and bred to when you get the jersey, you automatically become good. But like I said, we knew what Pittsburgh could be, and they're showing that. Other than Kenny Pickett, while these other teams should be bad and are miraculously good. And that's usually what happens, right?
Yeah, I think the Texans, right, with D'Amico Ryans, that just depends, kind of like with CJ Stroud, right? If they make the playoffs, if I think that kind of depends on their record in that sense.
Well,
now,
I could see D'Amico Ryan have he has a strong case even if they don't make the playoffs with just the turnaround. What were they, a 2-win team last year? Yeah. So I mean, he has a case no matter what. But when you're looking at Stroud to win MVP, they have to make the playoffs for him to win MVP.
If the Raiders make the playoffs, it's absolutely Antonio Pierce. It has to be.
That would be
to get your coach fired and then you make the playoffs. It has to be Antonio Pierce.
That never happened in the NFL.
I'm sure there's been coaches that have been fired where they made the playoffs on a hot start,
but
off a cold start.
No, but to be then named,
coach of the year. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Find out.
I mean, he has a path considering that the team's not that bad. Like, there's good players on that team. He didn't inherit a dumpster fire. It was just being managed as a dumpster fire.
Yeah. I mean, still, you had Jimmy G as your quarterback to have Aiden O'Connell. If they make the playoffs with this roster or with the guys starting, it is an absolute coach. He deserves it more than anything ever. More than DeMar Hamlin will deserve the comeback player of the year. It's that crazy.
I will say, they should have started O'Connell well before 2 games ago, right?
Aiden O'Connell stinks.
Yeah, but at least he's
terrible. I'd rather Jimmy.
He's force feeding Devontae Adams. That's what you want, right? You want him to throw the ball to Devontae Adams. That was not happening before.
Well, we could just rule out this conversation because I just looked at the Raiders' schedule for the rest of the season.
Oh, it's terrible. They're not going to make playoffs.
Dolphins, Chiefs, Vikings, Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, who are now a better team than the Raiders. I'll say that.
Yeah.
They might win one game for the rest of the year.
Yeah. All right, we'll finish with the rest of the day and we'll get this week's. We talked about Buccaneers beating up on the Titans. You had the 49ers in the game of the week just showing that the Jaguars are frauds. Both those teams at 6-3. Browns beating the Ravens, which no one saw happening. The Browns defense is all world. They're better than the Jets defenses. They are so good. Cardinals beating the Falcons. Arthur Smith does not need to be in front of the screen anymore. Talk to the Lions Chargers. Finally, Seahawks Commanders. And then Broncos Bills, which Broncos getting the win over the Buffalo Bills, and Josh Allen just having one of his worst seasons I've ever seen. All right, week 11. Obviously, right now, Bengals, Ravens up 7-3. I saw that injury. I really hope Mark Andrews is okay. All right, your guys' picks, your game picks for this Sunday, November 19th slate, and Monday.
So I'll go first. I got 2 games. One, just because it's the great defense, right? Bills, Jets. We had an interesting, fun opening season game, right? On Monday night a few weeks ago. 11 weeks ago now. That Monday night game was pretty fantastic to watch. So looking to see what the Jets defense can still do against the Bills, what firing their offensive coordinator does to them, how they change it. So I think that'll be a interesting game to watch. And then that Monday night game, Chiefs versus Eagles, Super Bowl. This could be Super Bowl again this year, right? So we'll see who comes out on top and who has the bragging rights until they potentially meet in the playoffs.
Yeah, this is a much better primetime slate than we had last week. Actually, all the primetime games are actually working good. You wouldn't think Vikings and Broncos would be a good game, but now where we're at in the season, the Broncos at 4-5, Vikings at 6-4. That's actually an interesting Sunday night game. But outside of that, if you're a fan of points being scored, not a lot of defense being played, look no further than the Cardinals taking on the Texans. I would not be surprised if that game finished 45-45. Outside of that, if you're a fan of no offense and only defense, I implore you to turn on the Steelers-Browns because I don't see many points getting scored in that game at all. But some great games. You just got to look. You get your choice this week. If you want points, there's points. If you want no points, there's that too.
They're going to battle for who can get the first safety. It's the battle for safeties, just who can score as many safeties as possible.
What was that game last week? Was who did Iowa play where the over under was like the lowest ever?
Oh yeah, it was like 30 points, right? Was it 30 points? Iowa over under last week. Odds makers dish Hawkeyes over under ahead of Illinois game. It was the Illinois game, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so right. Rutgers, Iowa opened at 28.5, which is crazy. The Hawkeyes beat Scarlet Knights 22-0. This game opened at 20 total.
It's fantastic.
20 points is awesome. That is fantastic. I would have bet the under. What was the score? Did you see? I actually didn't see that.
I can't remember.
All right, for me, quickly before we get out of here, I do like. Who would have thought that Sam Howell would be leading the league in passing yards through Week 10? I'm not really caring to watch the Giants Commanders, but I'm sure it's an NFC East, game. They'll play each other tough. I do. The Monday night is fantastic. I want to see what certain teams do now post some bad losses. One being the Jaguars. I mean, you have to go out there and smack around the Titans. I don't think that's really anything big to say. The Cowboys are going to beat on another sister of the poor with the Panthers, 1-8. The Dolphins are going to beat on the Raiders. I just see that they need those kind of wins, especially coming back, coming off the bye and a loss to KC in London.
Yeah, Dolphins will
Chargers,
still win, and they'll have the benefit that the Raiders technically don't have a winning record. Dolphins can't play against anyone with a winning record. So 5-5, cue up all your Dolphins. They're going off.
Yeah, they are. Same thing, Chargers, although they might not have Keenan Allen this week after he hit his 10,000 yard mark. He got hurt. I think the Chargers are another team that can beat on the Packers. Herbert's having a great year, 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, but that offense just has gone off. Their defense just can't stop anything. Lions, I could see them getting a pretty good win. Jahmyr Gibbs has looked great. And there was one other game I wanted to touch on. 49ers Bucks, which sneakily, if Buccaneers can score in this game, they're not going to be able to stop the Niners. But if they can score in this game, it could be close, right? In Santa Clara. I'm a little bit of a fan.
I was sad to see McCaffrey and his streak end.
Yeah, ended. Still, he had a good game too. He was. The guy's got his all-purpose yards. His all-purpose yards are already. What is he at? He was at. He's over 1,000. Yeah, he's 1,200. He's projected at to be over 2,000 yards, which is fantastic. I mean, these guys are sick now. You guys got anything else before we head out?
No. Little trivia.
Yep, as always.
Alrighty. All right, Brett. I got one that is a call out to a Steeler. So TJ Watt notched his 88th career sack in his 96th career appearance, surpassing his brother, JJ Watt, for the second most sacks in a player's first 100 career games. Which player is TJ Watt behind in that?
Easy one.
Just in general?
Yeah. So
most sacks in their first 100 games. Yeah.
DeMarcus Ware, maybe?
He's the best. No, he's the second, well, might be the best player of all time. Might be the best defensive player.
What you got?
Reggie
Minister
White
of Defense. That is correct. Reggie White with 105 sacks.
If you've never watched, 105 sacks in 100 games is absolutely crazy from the defensive tackle position. By the way, if you have never seen highlights of Reggie White's hip throws where he would just toss linemen back, you have to go out and watch it. It is one of the just an absolute beast, and just taking 300-pound linemen and tossing them like ragdolls. The guy was all world. I actually think he is the best defensive player of all time. I know Lawrence Taylor was ridiculous, but Reggie White, from what he could do at that position, where you just collapse the pocket from the interior, and he had the pass rush of an end, he was all world.
One of the things I didn't realize was that he played for the USFL before he played for the NFL.
Yeah.
He played for the USFL for like a year and a half, basically until it folded, which is insane to me. So, like, just imagine the stats he could rack up even more.
Yeah, he came in, I think, when he was 24, and he only played in 13 games that first season in 85, and he had 13 sacks, but his sack total is 18, 21, 18, 15, 15, 14. Like, the guy just was ridiculous. And he was getting 100 tackles each year from the defensive tackle spot. Because he used to go inside, outside. He was 6'5", 300 pounds, just crazy. Obviously passed at 43 in 2004, and it was very sad to see him go. But between him, Philly and Green Bay, I mean, he wins the Super Bowl with Green Bay. Just absolute craziest player I've ever seen. All right, you guys got nothing else. We're gonna head out of here. We look forward to Week 11, and hopefully Jets shiny toy come Week 12. Maybe sitting in the quarterback room, just twiddling his thumbs, waiting for the opportunity to come and lead the Jets to the promised land. I'll be hoping.
Jets
I'll be
sitting. I guarantee he gets hurt second play of the game.
Oh, you suck.
Tears his Achilles.
I'm out of here. You guys suck.